Thanks for listening to the Family Bible Journey podcast, where we are leaving the legacy of faith by journaling through the Bible. This is episode 285, season 1 of the Family Bible Journey Old Testament podcast. Today we're looking at Job chapters 12 and 13. The title of today's podcast is Which Wisdom Do You Prefer? And our key verses for today are chapter 12, verses 1 to 10, and 21 to 25, where we read, Then Job answered, No doubt you are the people, and wisdom will die with you. But I have understanding as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Who does not know such things as these? I am a laughingstock to my friends. I who called to God, and he answered me. A just and blameless man am a laughingstock. In the thought of one who is at ease, there is contempt for misfortune. It is ready for those whose feet slip. The tents of robbers are at peace, and those who provoke God are secure, who bring their God in their hand. But ask the beasts, and they will teach you, the birds of the heavens, and they will tell you, or the bushes of the earth, and they will teach you, and the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind. Picking up in verse 21. He pours contempt on princes and loosens the belt of the strong. He uncovers the deeps out of the darkness and brings deep darkness to light. He makes nations great and he destroys them. He enlarges nations and leads them away. He takes away understanding from the chiefs of the people on the earth and makes them wander in a pathless waste. They grope in the darkness without light, and he makes them stagger like a drunken man. This is the word of the Lord. In these two chapters, Job is defending himself from the assaults of his supposed friends. And as he does, he points out some truths that are relatively inconsistent and I would say inconvenient for the arguments that his friends had made against him. In verse 4, Job says, I am a laughingstock to my friends. I who called to God and he answered me, a just and a blameless man, am a laughingstock. My note on the verse says, sadly, so it often goes in this life. We live in a world where the righteous often suffer, where they don't always prosper. And as a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say that those who truly put others first often end up getting the short end of the stick because we live in a world that is broken, in a world that does not operate as it should anymore. And then in verse 6, Job says something that to some ears might even sound blasphemous. He says, the tents of robbers are at peace, and those who provoke God are secure, who bring their God in their hand. What Job is saying here is that those who worship idols, false gods, those gods in their hands, those gods that were in ancient times carved of wood or ivory or gold or silver or clay or some other precious metal, those who worship the false gods of this world are often secure. And again, this is true because as Jesus himself says, God makes the sun shine and the rain fall on the righteous and the unrighteous alike. God's chief virtue is mercy, which means that he allows some to prosper, even though they don't deserve it. And sometimes those who, in our humble estimation, should be prospering, don't, even sometimes for doing the exact right thing. And this does not make sense. And when Job talks about the wisdom of creation, that the creatures know inherently that God is God, and that they understand in ways that human beings no longer do, the supremacy and the sovereignty of God. That is an intriguing thought to me, something that I honestly haven't really spent a lot of time considering. But when we consider that it is the heart of man that has gone astray, that at the very root of our desires oftentimes is a base and sinful and sometimes even sinister plan, well, then maybe it isn't too hard of a stretch for us to imagine that the creatures, the birds, the fish, the livestock may understand God and his nature better than human beings who have a perverse heart. And so something, again, that I hadn't really spent much time thinking about, but kind of makes a lot of sense when we consider how far it is that mankind has fallen from the will of God. And then at the tail end of chapter 12, Job discusses the reality that God raises nations up and he casts them down. And I am a little concerned that at this point in our history, especially in our history as a supposedly Christian nation, that many people are appropriating to themselves blessings that God is not granting us as a nation. That the false gods of our nation, such as money and power and sex and human beauty, these things are celebrated in the world that we live in, and oftentimes that we are putting into positions of leadership or authority over us people who embody the worst of human morality. And this isn't an American phenomenon. This is a human phenomenon. And if we lull ourselves into a false sense of security by convincing ourselves that we are somehow a Christian nation and in any way better than any of the other nations, then when, not if, but when things come tumbling down, we are going to be not prepared to deal with the ramifications of that. And there are many things that we kind of take for granted, I believe, as citizens of these great United States. Things like a wonderful and powerful military, the fact that we are geographically isolated from most of our enemies, the hope that we have of Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, and many programs that people don't realize are so important until they need them. And so we do well as a people of God not to put our faith in the stock market, in our favorite team, in our Social Security account, but rather recognize that all of these things are going to pass away. It's not a question of if, it is simply a question of how and when. But when they do, we need not fear, because God has blessed us eternally in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ. And while we love these things and we appreciate them and we are thankful for them and we enjoy them as great blessings from God that they are, we dare not put our faith in them, because everything in this world, it is fleeting, it is passing away, and it will be taken from us sooner or later. And when this calamity comes, when difficult times arise, it is good for us as the people of God to accept it as our lot in life, recognizing that God takes things away from us that we would sometimes put our faith in instead of him, even if we didn't realize it. And so those times of loss, those times of difficulty, God does not send them our way because he hates us, but rather because he loves us. And he uses the difficult things in this life more than the good things to draw our hearts and our attention back to him, so that we can take heart when hopes are dashed and faith is shaken, because we know that the one who ultimately orders our days is not going to be dismayed by the loss of such earthly things, but rather is going to use these things and the loss of these things to draw our hearts, minds, and attention back to him. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and a special thank you to all whose financial contributions make this ministry work. If you would like to support our podcast so that others can be blessed by the Family Bible Journey as you are, go to our website, familybiblejourney.com, where you can make a one-time contribution, or better yet, become one of our monthly sponsors. Our blessing for today. When men speak insolence against God, may you be blessed with the wisdom of creation, which proclaims the manifold wisdom and power of God. Amen.